In this video, we're going to talk about periodontal disease and how it is associated with systemic infections. So peri means around, dontal means tooth. So periodontal disease is disease that forms around the tooth. And this is extremely common. In fact, over 80% of people over 35 years old have some degree of periodontal disease. And there's more and more association studies and clinical trials beginning to show that there's connections between the bacteria found in the mouth and systemic infections. For example, someone may die of a heart attack and they do a post-mortem look at their arteries and see that inside their arterial plaques there's P. gingivitis or T. denticola, or some of these bacteria that are only found in the mouth, finding their way into the bloodstream and getting into these plaques. Same thing with Alzheimer's disease and the plaques they found when they're doing an autopsy. They see these same bacteria in these plaques, and they also increase inflammation in the body. So let's dive in a little deeper here and look at what's going on. Gingiva, that means gums. Itis means inflammation. So gingivitis is inflammation of the gums, and that's typically where it starts. You know, if your gums bleed easily, or they're kind of bright red, or you start to notice some receding, these are some stages, the first stages of periodontal disease. And many of you might be younger than 35, but this isn't something that happens overnight. This is something that develops over decades, and some of the choices you make can determine whether you're in that 80% or not that get periodontal disease. And basically, as you get gingivitis, your gum kind of starts to pull away from the tooth, and you develop some pockets. And these bacteria in the mouth love to get down into these pockets and form biofilms. Biofilms are where all the bacteria kind of come together and work as a team, and it makes it really hard for them to come off of the tooth and hide down in those pockets. Toothbrush can't get in there. So as the gum recedes and pulls away, you can see some recession of the gums here. That's something that is not going to regenerate. So once you've lost that gum around the tooth, there's no going back. So it's good to work on this early on and prevent this from occurring. I have some gum recession primarily from brushing too hard. It seems like in the mornings I just kind of always wanted to brush hard and fast and kind of get out there. And I thought the harder I brush, the more I'm getting the plaque off, but that's not necessarily true. It's good to brush at that gum line. Sometimes in little circles, kind of facilitating the gum across the tooth, and try to save that gum line as much as possible. Because if it recedes enough, it also erodes the bone, and this is the number one cause of tooth loss, is periodontal disease. So one thing to watch that's really big to avoid periodontal disease is eating foods that contain sucrose. These are all the refined carbohydrates, fried foods, sweets like candy, cakes, anything like pancakes, anything like this has a lot of sucrose, and sucrose is the food of choice for the bacteria, especially Streptococcus mutans, that resides in the mouth. And when Streptococcus mutans metabolizes sucrose, it gives off lactic acid, and lactic acid wears away a cavity into the enamel. And that's what the dentist sees and feels, and as it deepens, it can get all the way into the pulp and into the where the nerves and the blood supply is, and that allows a portal for the bacteria to get into the systemic bloodstream and circulate all through the body, wreaking havoc on different systems. It can even get into the bone, the bacteria, and cause an abscess. So this is something that can be prevented by your diet and oral health. Some other ideas on preventing dental caries, which is tooth decay that we just saw in the previous slide. Brushing, flossing. Don't neglect the flossing. You need to floss at least once a day. And if you don't floss and you don't think it's needed, we're talking about those little pockets that form inside the teeth. We all have some degree of a pocket there that brushing just will not get to. Try flossing after you brush one night and see what you're missing and what just marinates in there all night long. Mouthwash with chlorhexidine is good. Increase saliva, so chewing sugarless gum. So sugarless gum has sugar alcohols like xylitol, and these actually help inhibit S-mutans, that metabolism where they give off lactic acid, and also it increases saliva, which has an antimicrobial enzyme called lysozyme in it. Using fluorinated toothpaste and water that just hardens the enamel, makes it harder for that acid to wear a cavity into it. So this is just a slide just kind of reinforcing how these periodontal bacteria, P. gingivalis, will get down into the bloodstream, work their way into the brain, into the arteries. You can see that it increases your risk of premature death by 400 to 700%. Increases risk of certain cancers, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. Lots of association studies showing the bacteria in the mouth causing inflammation throughout the body. Inflammation is the root of so many diseases. And when these gram-negative bacteria, like P. gingivalis, get into the bloodstream, your body combats it with an immune response. And the immune response and the inflammation caused by the bacteria, the lipopolysaccharides and the gram-negative bacterial membrane, these just lead to so many diseases. So when you do floss your teeth, it's really important that you take the time, hug the tooth. My daughter's in dental school now, so she coaches me up on this stuff. When you go between the teeth, hug the tooth with the floss, and work your way into the tooth without pushing into the gums, because every time you create a bleeding situation, that opens a portal for some bacteria to get into your bloodstream. So especially if you're not conditioned to flossing, you need to really be careful and take time, hug the tooth, go down, make it a goal each time you floss not to cause any bleeding, because you might be doing more harm than good. So here are some prevention strategies for periodontal disease. Brush after every meal. So don't give any sucrose or any other substrate for these bacteria to use. Just nip it in the bud, brush with every meal. One thing I haven't seen studies with this, but it makes sense. When I floss, I use tea tree oil. It has antimicrobial effects, and I'll put it between my finger and thumb and then run it along the length of the floss. And that way, when the floss is getting in there in those pockets where those biofilms try to form, you have that antimicrobial with it. And I've seen good results from doing this and some other of these strategies. I used to have a real bright rim at the base of my gum line, and that's been eliminated using these strategies. Smoking is bad for this, like everything else. A periodontist is a dentist who specializes in periodontal disease, and they use a periodontal probe, and they can push that little probe in that gap and see, is it 1 to 3 millimeters or is it more? Normal is 1 to 3 millimeters, I believe, but if you have more than 3, then those pockets are really deep, and I think you fall into that criteria of an increased stage of periodontal disease. Eating raw vegetables, these help clean your teeth and stimulate your gums. Oil pulling, this is another one that I don't know if there's a lot of research behind it, but a lot of people recommend this. So you basically just put like a spoonful of coconut oil in your mouth and it'll melt. And you just swish it around for about 10 or 15 minutes. And it helps try to pull some of this bacteria out of those crevices, and then you just spit it out. I've done that before. I was on a kick where I was doing it quite a bit. And then light brushing, and it should last 3 to 5 minutes. And you brush at the gum line at a 45-degree angle. Listerine is a good mouthwash. Baking soda, it's going to buffer that acid. So if you can put a little bit of that with some water on your gum line and kind of brush with it, you can help kind of buffer those acids. And another one it says here is swish 3 times a week with 3% solution of hydrogen peroxide mixed half and half with water. So hydrogen peroxide is another one that can kill microorganisms. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention at how serious your oral health is in the grand scheme of your systemic health.